The conference room at the downtown headquarters of a burgeoning tech firm was alive with a buzz of conversation. Modern art hung on the walls, and the expansive windows framed a bustling cityscape that pulsed with the energy of New York City in the early spring. I, Savannah Pierce, sat at a sleek, oval table, tapping my pen thoughtfully against my notepad when my phone suddenly lit up. Expecting a routine check-in from one of my colleagues or perhaps a friendly "how's it going?" text, I glanced at the screen. The incoming call was from Spencer. I took a deep breath and answered, prepared for the usual small talk about weekend plans or the latest office gossip. Instead, Spencer's voice, cool, detached, and disturbingly smug, cut through the chatter. "Savannah, we need to talk. I'm divorcing you." His words hit me like a freight train. For a moment, the noise of the conference room faded into a distant hum as shock, anger, and disbelief battled within me. "Divorcing me?" I managed, steadying my voice even as my heart pounded. "What exactly are you saying?" There was a pause on the other end, as though he was savoring each syllable of my confusion. "I already sold our apartment," he said, his tone laced with triumph. "I've signed the deal. You'll need to figure out where you're going to live from now on." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "Sold the apartment? Are you serious?" I pressed, my voice shaking with equal parts outrage and sorrow. A dry, almost dismissive laugh came through the line. "Yeah, Savannah. I'm doing this for a fresh start. Brianna and I need the money to set up our new life. Besides, you know that place was never really big enough for either of us." Brianna, the new partner Spencer casually mentioned as if she were an afterthought, was a name that stung bitterly. I'd suspected for months that Spencer's late nights, unexpected business trips, and the growing emotional distance between us hinted at secrets. Yet, hearing him mention Brianna, as if our life together were just a casual arrangement, was a punch to the gut. I ended the call with a curt, "noted," and immediately felt my blood boil with a mixture of humiliation and determination. For the rest of the morning, I sat through the meeting in a daze, nodding at every point while my mind raced with thoughts of betrayal. How could Spencer, who I'd trusted implicitly during our 6 years together, commit such a calculated act? The apartment we had bought together wasn't just a building, it was a testament to all the years of dreams, sacrifices, and love we'd shared. And now, it was being sold behind my back, without my consent. After the meeting, I excused myself and made a beeline for the elevator. Instead of letting my emotions consume me, I decided to channel my shock into a plan. I pulled out my phone and dialed Morgan Reed, my longtime lawyer and friend known for her unwavering cool and razor-sharp wit. "Morgan, it's Savannah," I said in a measured tone as soon as she answered. I recounted every detail: the call, Spencer's nonchalant declaration, and the revelation that he had already sold our shared apartment. Morgan listened carefully before replying. "Savannah, you need to know something important. If the deed is in your name alone, then this sale is null and void. Did you ever have it transferred?" A memory sparked in my mind. Months earlier, when we'd refinanced the apartment, I had insisted on having the deed solely transferred to my name. Spencer had been too eager to save on interest rates and had barely skimmed the paperwork. "I did it, Morgan. The deed's been in my name for months," I confirmed with a mix of relief and newfound resolve. Morgan's voice grew firm and decisive. "Then you have all the legal grounds to void this entire transaction. I'll notify the buyer immediately. We'll draft a formal letter outlining the illegality of the sale, and if Spencer tries anything else, we're taking him straight to court." I could hardly let the words sink in as I left the building. The betrayal stung bitterly, but beneath that hurt was a spark of empowerment. Spencer had thought he could pull the rug out from under me by selling the apartment and abandoning our life together. Instead, he unwittingly set the stage for his own downfall. That evening, as twilight bathed the city in a soft, golden glow, I returned to our apartment, a space I had once filled with dreams and laughter. Tonight, however, it felt ominously quiet, as though the walls themselves were bracing for the inevitable confrontation. Spencer's belongings were scattered about in the usual careless fashion, jackets thrown over chairs, shoes abandoned by the door. The apartment, which had once been our sanctuary, now carried an unsettling emptiness that mirrored my inner turmoil. I had barely set down my suitcase when the front door slammed open. Spencer stormed in, his face flushed with anger and disbelief. In his hand, he clutched his phone as if it were a lifeline. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, waving a printed copy of Morgan's formal letter in my face. "You're telling me I can't sell the apartment because the deed is in your name?" I crossed my arms calmly, every word measured and deliberate. "That's right, Spencer. The deed has been in my name for months now. You can't sell something you don't legally own." For a long, heavy moment, he stared at me, confusion giving way to a fury that simmered just beneath the surface. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, as if trying to force the truth from his own tangled words. I retrieved the deed from the file I'd kept and held it up, letting the crisp paper bear witness to my assertion. "After we refinanced, I made sure the deed was solely mine. You signed off on it, if only you'd bothered to read the paperwork instead of skimming it like you always do." His face twisted into a sneer as he tried to muster some sort of comeback. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" he spat, his voice a mixture of anger and humiliation. "This doesn't change anything, Savannah. I've already made a deal, and you're going to look like a fool when it all falls apart." I took a step closer, lowering my voice to a controlled, icy calm. "The sale is already void, Spencer. The buyer has been notified, and they are prepared to take legal action if you don't refund their money. And if you've spent even a dime of that deposit, you're in deeper trouble." His confidence wavered for the first time, and I could see the panic creeping into his eyes. "You don't know what you're talking about," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," I replied evenly. "You've spent years treating me like I'm naive, but guess what? I was paying attention. And now you're about to face the consequences." Spencer began pacing the room, his frustration mounting with every step. "This is ridiculous," he finally blurted out. "You can't just kick me out of our home." I raised an eyebrow and replied with quiet authority, "Actually, I can. This apartment is legally mine. You're welcome to stay temporarily, but only until you figure out your next move. Just know, this is my home now, and I'm not letting you dictate the rules any longer." The following days were a whirlwind of phone calls, legal maneuvers, and emotional reckonings. Spencer's desperation manifested in frantic voicemails, his tone swinging wildly between pleading and threatening. Meanwhile, Morgan worked diligently behind the scenes. She informed me that the buyer was both shocked and infuriated by Spencer's deceit, and was now fully aligned with our legal stance. Not only was the sale invalid, but Spencer was also teetering on the brink of fraud charges, a prospect that made my pulse race with both vindication and satisfaction. As the storm of legal and personal battles raged on, I began reclaiming the apartment, both physically and emotionally. My best friend, Madison Hart, arrived one evening with a mountain of takeout and a bottle of chilled wine. So, is he really gone? She asked with a dramatic sigh as she flopped onto the worn leather couch. I laughed despite the gravity of the situation. Gone and not coming back. I poured us both a generous glass of wine. We're toasting to fresh starts and well-deserved victories. Madison raised her glass in a sparkling salute. Here's to never letting anyone walk all over you again. That night, as I sat surrounded by boxes of Spencer's belongings, carefully stored away in a corner, I felt a powerful mix of relief and exhilaration. With every item we packed, I shed another layer of the past, reclaiming not only my space, but also the identity I had nearly lost in the mire of our failed marriage. Days later, the final confrontation arrived. Spencer returned with Brianna, who had long been the uninvited symbol of his betrayal. They sauntered into the apartment, as if it were their own domain. Brianna, exuding an air of entitlement with a smug smile, and her arm casually looped through Spencer's, announced, "So this is where we're staying now." My heart hammered in my chest, but I stood tall. "No, Brianna," I said firmly, meeting their eyes with unwavering resolve. "This is where Spencer is staying. You're not welcome here." Brianna's smile faltered for a split second as she glanced at Spencer, who looked equally stunned. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice cracking as he tried to regain control of the situation. I gestured to the apartment around me, the space that had once been so full of our shared memories, but was now a symbol of my emancipation. "This is my home, Spencer. Not yours, not Brianna's, and certainly not a hotel for you two to hide behind your lies. Remember, you sold an apartment that wasn't even yours to sell. That sale is void." Brianna's eyes narrowed, and I could sense the tension in the room reaching a fever pitch. "You can't do this," Spencer pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. "We've been together for 6 years. Don't you care about what we built?" I shook my head slowly, the finality in my tone leaving no room for negotiation. "I care about myself. And that's exactly why you're being thrown out. I'm giving you until the end of the day to pack your things and figure out your next move. If you try to cross any more lines, Morgan's already prepared to let the courts handle it." Spencer's face contorted with a mixture of anger and humiliation as he realized the full extent of his loss. Brianna, on the other hand, only managed a tight-lipped stare before turning on her heel and storming out, leaving him standing alone in a silence that screamed of defeat. After he finally gathered his belongings, a haphazard collection of clothes, gadgets, and remnants of a once-shared life, Spencer slumped into the worn sofa, his head hanging low. "Savannah," he murmured, voice thick with regret, "please, I screwed up. I couldn't bring myself to offer any compassion. You had your chance, Spencer. I don't hate you, I pity you. You had everything, and you threw it all away because you couldn't see past your own ego." I placed a folder on the coffee table and slid it in front of him. "This is the divorce paperwork Morgan drafted. The sooner you sign it, the sooner we can both move on." I added, "And know this isn't just about the apartment. It's about reclaiming my life, my independence, and finally putting an end to the control you once wielded over me." Spencer hesitated, his face draining of color, as he took in the gravity of his actions. "You really hate me that much?" he whispered. I exhaled slowly, a bittersweet laugh escaping me. "No, Spencer. I don't hate you. I'm just sorry that you couldn't see what we had until it was too late. Now, please, pack your things and leave." With a final, defeated nod, he gathered his coat and left without a backward glance. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, I locked it with a new key, a symbol of the fresh start I was determined to embrace. The apartment, once heavy with the echoes of betrayal and despair, now seemed lighter, brighter, and unequivocally mine. Over the next several weeks, I poured every ounce of energy into transforming the space into a haven that reflected my true self. I rearranged the furniture, hung vibrant artwork that celebrated both my resilience and my renewed sense of hope, and filled the rooms with plants and personal mementos that told the story of a woman who had risen above adversity. There was a quirky joy in choosing new decor, a vintage jukebox that played classic rock and roll tunes, a coffee table that reminded me of quirky American diners, and even a small framed poster of Snoop Dogg's most iconic moments, which always brought a smirk to my face whenever I passed by. One breezy Saturday afternoon, I found myself sorting through old boxes of memorabilia. Among the cherished items was a photo of Spencer and me from the early days of our relationship, a time when our smiles were genuine and our future seemed limitless. I studied that picture for a long moment, letting the bittersweet memories wash over me. There had been hope and promise then, but also hints of cracks that I had foolishly ignored. Carefully, I tucked the photo into an envelope, not to erase it, but to remind myself that the past was just that, a collection of memories that no longer defined who I was. Later that week, I met up with Madison again at a trendy rooftop bar in the heart of the city, a place that boasted stunning skyline views and an ambience as vibrant as the city itself. Over craft cocktails and a few bites of gourmet sliders, Madison raised her glass and said, "Savannah, you're glowing. This new chapter suits you." I couldn't help but laugh, a sound that mingled with the gentle hum of lively conversation and the distant strains of an indie band performing in the corner. "It's not just the single life," I replied, "it's the freedom to finally live on my own terms. I'm done playing by someone else's rules." As the night unfolded, the city lights seemed to mirror the twinkle in my eyes, a promise that even after the darkest of storms, hope could be found in the twinkling reflections of a bustling metropolis. There was humor in the absurdity of it all, in the way life had turned out. I recalled a line from a classic American comedy, "Sometimes you've got to laugh at the chaos to keep from crying." And laugh I did, as I recounted the entire debacle with Madison, peppering my narrative with cultural references that only deepened our bond. We joked about how Spencer had been as clueless as a contestant on a reality dating show, and how his inability to read a simple contract made him a walking cautionary tale. My newfound strength wasn't just legal or financial, it was emotional. I began taking long walks in Central Park, often accompanied by the upbeat rhythms of my favorite podcasts, and even enrolled in a creative writing workshop where I rediscovered the power of storytelling. I realized that my journey, though painful, was also a rich tapestry of experiences that could inspire others who felt trapped by circumstances beyond their control. During one particularly reflective evening, while sipping chamomile tea in my newly renovated living room, I found myself contemplating the irony of it all. Spencer had laughed during that fateful phone call, as if he were celebrating a small personal victory. Now, his laughter had long since faded into silence, replaced by the steady rhythm of my own heart beating with renewed purpose. I recalled a scene from an old American film, a heroine reclaiming her destiny amid the ruins of a broken relationship, and I knew that my life, too, was about to take a dramatic turn for the better. Morgan kept me updated on the divorce proceedings. The buyer's legal team is shocked at Spencer's audacity, and they are backing our claim 100%, she informed me during one of our late-night calls. Once you sign the papers, it's not just about finalizing the divorce, it's about sending a message that you deserve respect. That message reverberated through every corner of my new life. I even started a blog to document my journey, a space where I could share the highs and lows of reclaiming my identity, peppered with humorous anecdotes, cultural critiques, and insights into the American way of turning personal defeat into triumph. It wasn't too long before my posts began resonating with thousands of readers who had faced similar betrayals and were hungry for inspiration. One weekend, I hosted a small get-together in the apartment. Friends old and new gathered in a celebration of life, a sort of impromptu freedom fiesta. Madison, dressed in a chic, vintage dress reminiscent of old Hollywood glamour, toasted with sparkling cider. To Savannah, the woman who turned heartbreak into an art form, she declared, drawing laughter and cheers from everyone present. As the evening wore on, conversation flowed freely, and somewhere between stories of past mistakes and dreams of a promising future, I realized how far I'd come. Every detail of that tumultuous period, every moment of betrayal, every tear shed in solitude, had led me to this pivotal point where I was in complete control of my destiny. Even the presence of cultural icons like Snoop Dogg on my wall, a quirky reminder of resilience in the face of adversity, served as a constant motivator to keep pushing forward. It wasn't lost on me that, in this modern American saga, there were echoes of classic films and literature, a touch of Humphrey Bogart's stoicism, a dash of Joan Crawford's fierce independence, and even the irreverent humor found in the best of indie comedies. These cultural references reminded me that while life could be devastatingly unfair, it was also filled with opportunities for reinvention and growth. As the divorce papers were finalized and Spencer's signature sealed his fate, I felt a profound sense of liberation. I wasn't just ending a chapter one, was boldly beginning a new one. One where I controlled the narrative, where my mistakes became lessons, and where every setback was simply a setup for a greater comeback. I could almost hear the faint strains of a Bruce Springsteen anthem playing in the background, a reminder that this is a new dawn. A month later, my apartment was transformed beyond recognition, not by drastic renovations, but by the palpable energy of renewed self-worth. Every piece of furniture, every carefully placed accessory, told a story of a woman who had fought back against injustice. I spent countless evenings curled up on the sofa with a good book, a steaming mug of artisanal coffee in hand, and the city's pulse whispering promises of tomorrow through the window. One crisp autumn evening, I sat by the window, watching as the skyline shimmered with lights and memories of what once was. I thought back to that fateful phone call, the moment when Spencer's cold words shattered the illusion of our perfect life, and realized that, in a strange way, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to confront the truth. I was stronger than I had ever believed. I had taken control of my destiny, and no one, especially not someone like Spencer, would ever be allowed to define me again. My blog had grown into a thriving community of readers who shared their own stories of heartbreak and healing, and I began hosting live sessions where we could all laugh, cry, and celebrate the messiness of life. In one memorable session, I even quoted Snoop Dogg's timeless advice about keeping it real, and the audience roared with approval. It was in these moments that I realized the true power of vulnerability and resilience in a world that often seemed determined to keep us down. And so, as the pages of my story continued to fill with hope, humor, and a dash of that signature American grit, I embraced every new day with gratitude and a fierce determination. I knew there would be challenges ahead, moments when old wounds might reopen and the scars of betrayal might remind me of the past, but I also knew that I had the strength to face them. I had reclaimed not just an apartment, but my entire life, and that was a victory worth celebrating. In the end, what had started as a day of crushing betrayal had blossomed into a powerful journey of self-discovery and rebirth. I was no longer defined by the mistakes of a failed marriage or the careless actions of someone who never truly valued me. Instead, I was the architect of my own future, a future filled with possibility, passion, and the kind of relentless determination that only comes from surviving life's toughest battles. To anyone reading this who might be in the midst of their own struggle, remember that you are more than the sum of your hardships. Life is a series of moments, both painful and beautiful, and it's up to you to write your own story. And if all else fails, take a cue from the legends of American pop culture. When the going gets tough, sometimes you just have to kick back, laugh at the absurdity of it all, and let the rhythm of life carry you forward. This is my story, a testament to the fact that sometimes, when everything seems lost, the best thing that can happen is a chance to start over. And as I stand here today, in a space that is entirely and unequivocally mine, I know one thing for sure: I am free. Free from the chains of a toxic past, free to embrace every moment, and free to create a future that is as bright and boundless as the New York skyline at dawn. And so, the journey continues. Every morning, as I sip my coffee and watch the city come alive, I am reminded that life is about making choices, bold, courageous choices that honor who you truly are. The echoes of the past may linger, but they no longer dictate my future. I am Savannah Pierce, a woman reborn through heartbreak, empowered by truth, and forever guided by the belief that no one has the right to dim your light. In a world full of unexpected twists, where even the most painful betrayals can pave the way for extraordinary transformations, I choose to live on my own terms. I choose to laugh at the irony of it all, to celebrate every small victory, and to keep moving forward, one day, one moment, one story at a time. As I close this chapter, I leave you with a simple thought: never let anyone else write your story. Embrace your flaws, cherish your victories, and always remember that the power to change your destiny lies in your own hands. After all, life's greatest tales are written by those brave enough to start over, and trust me, this is only the beginning.